Welcome back, you guys, to Andy the Banker Show. Today, we're going to be having the Costco earnings report. I already made a video about that on my expectation. I'm going to post another video after the Costco earnings report comes out. But I want to talk about a couple of investing news today. For example, today we found out that the FTX fraudster Caroline Ellison was sentenced to 2 years in prison, ordered to forfeit $11 billion. So, man, 2 years in prison for what they did, the scandal that they were running in FTX. In case you guys were not familiar with what happened at FTX, they were using the funds of customer accounts for personal usage. So imagine, let's say you were to put money in your brokerage, and that money in the brokerage, it's your money, and you had no idea that the owners of FTX were utilizing those funds for personal usage. And essentially, that's what happened here with FTX. And for me to see that Caroline Ellison only got 2 years, that was a little bit crazy here. So if we look at the key points here, right? Caroline Ellison, the girlfriend of Sam Bankman-Fried, was sentenced to New York federal court in Manhattan to 2 years in prison in order to forfeit $11 billion. That is a big hefty fine. Wow. And then Ellison, who ran the Alameda Research hedge funds affiliated with FTX, agreed to a plea deal in December 2022, a month after cryptocurrency exchange spiraled into bankruptcy. Judge Lewis Kaplan said a literal get out of jail free card I can't get agreed to, as he sentenced Ellison while praising her extensive cooperation. So can you imagine like the defense on for Caroline? They were saying, hey, maybe, because she was cooperating, she should not get a get out of jail card. That is just a little bit crazy to me. And for me, I mean, this type of crime, you're messing with a lot of people's money here, a ton of people's money. And to just get 2 years, that is definitely a little bit wild for me. And in other news, for you Tesla investors out there, now, I don't personally invest in Tesla, but I do drive a Tesla. And this was a little bit crazy to me here. It says Elon Musk confirms he gave NVIDIA AI chips meant for Tesla to X. Now, I get Elon's perspective. Elon is saying that, Tesla couldn't use these chips. So in the meantime, we just gave it to X. But if I was a Tesla shareholder, right, I think that would be a little bit too much for me, man. To find out that the chips that was meant to accelerate Tesla's AI advancements, they went to his own personal company. They were like, Elon was like, hey, you know what? You know those AI chips that we got? Just send them over to X. And the the fact that Tesla investors, they don't seem to be upset about this. They seem to be like, yeah, yeah, Elon Musk is whatever he says we're good with. That is a little bit wild to me. The fact that he can do this and nobody is there to challenge that. That is just a little bit wild for me. I mean, I can't even imagine if, let's say, for example, Microsoft, all the NVIDIA chips that were meant for Microsoft goes to Satya Nadella's personal company. I would be like, hold up, man, hold up. That's a little bit wild to me. How is it that people at Microsoft allowed Satya, hypothetically, Satya Nadella to use AI chips for his personal company, right? That's just wild to me. From what I'm hearing about other investors that are investing into Tesla, they just believe in Elon Musk's decision making, and they say that he has made many great decisions for Tesla, and apparently they seem to be agreeing with it. But I am sure there are a growing number of Tesla investors who think like me about Tesla. That I don't think it's a bad company, but that's a little bit over the top. To give away NVIDIA AI chips meant for Tesla to X. That's a little bit wild to me. And in other terms, here we have another news. So, in case you guys actually did not know, more than 50% of Americans typically have credit card debt. All right. And on average, Americans have about 6,300 in credit card debt. And in the CNBC article here, we see that, here's how much you'd pay monthly to clear it in 1, 2, or 3 years. Here's my thing. Like, if you're in credit card debt, my thought process is that humans naturally, I think of humans as like a, in a good way, that the reason why they're in debt is going to be because they're in a particular situation, right? Not there are going to be certain situations in life where we're not going to be financially stable, and I can't blame somebody for going to debt, you know, to survive. I get it. Maybe you get sick. Maybe there's a family illness. There's unexpected expenses that you may not you may not be aware of. But here's like how I would personally play this. If I happen to be the 50% of Americans that do have a credit card debt, right? I would personally try my best to do a balance transfer. All right, that if I happen to have credit card debt already, I would do a balance transfer. And it doesn't really matter in my personal appearance, like whichever card that you pick. I just think it comes down to personal preference, and whichever bank is your preference, right? Like you can pick Bank of America card here, zero annual fee. You can read it on here: 0% intro APR on purchases for 18 billing cycles, and 0% intro annual percentage rate on balance transfer for 18 billing cycles for balance transfer made in the first 60 days. So what that essentially means is, let's say you have $6,000 in credit card debt. You transfer it over to this Bank of America credit card. You're not gonna pay you're not gonna pay any interest for the 18 months, the first 18 billing cycles. However, one thing I do want to make sure you guys are well aware of is that typically, okay, not always, but typically, when you do make balance transfers on credit cards, there is a balance transfer fee. So even the balance transfer introductory APR, annual percentage rate, might be zero. Sometimes there are fees of maybe 3% or 5%, depending on the bank, and that's for you to do your own research. Now, and something I would have done way ahead of time, all right, before even getting into credit card debt. Because typically for me, let's say if I was to get into debt, I would have about a week or two at least had notice, right? Typically, I'm not gonna go from my net worth to owing money on my credit card overnight. It happens gradually. And if I know it's gonna happen gradually, if I know my expenses for the next 3 months are gonna be huge, like for example, let's say I'm moving, or there's some medical expenses, right? There's a surgery that's coming up, and I know exactly when my big expenses are coming in, then instead of doing a balance transfer, I personally would get a card that is 0% on purchases. Typically, there are many cards, like for example, the same card here, or let's say Discover It, right? Zero intro APR on purchases for 6 months. Now, typically, there are many other cards that are 0% interest for more than 6 months on the introductory APR. But just to give you an idea, now this is just one thought process on how you can manage your finances, because a lot of customers I help that do have credit card debt, they don't happen overnight, you guys. They happen gradually. They happen over a periodic time. And in those particular cases, if you're gonna be carrying a balance on your credit card, my question to people is like, why spend it on a card that charges you interest, whereas you could apply for a new credit card that maybe gives you introductory 0% interest on that card, and make those purchases on those cards. That's just a suggestion there, right? You don't have to take it. This is just something I would personally do, but it's not a recommendation like I would. It depends for each person. Every person has a different credit score, different income. You might not get approved for the credit card. Those are all things you want to make sure you consider. But it's just to give you an example. Let's say, if hypothetically, if I was in those shoes. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a feedback on Costco shares. All right. So Costco is about to report earnings tomorrow. And man, this is a company. It's in this particular portfolio, it's one of my biggest total return with 52%. My average cost on Costco is $5.98 in this account. And I've been buying this Costco for a while now. A while. Now, one thing that I really, really do enjoy about Costco is really their predictability. If you look at their PE ratio right now, I get it. It's 56 PE ratio. A lot of investors say Costco is overpriced. And I see what they mean because when I was buying Costco, they were typically trading in the 40 PE ratio, somewhere in between 40 and 50. And now it's over 50%. And I have an idea on essentially why, how it became like my personal opinions on that is because the past couple months, past year or so, we've been having recession fears. People were believing that Costco is actually going to be in a recession. And based on the performance of past recessions, Costco didn't get destroyed during 2008. Costco did not get destroyed during 2020. In fact, actually, like if you remember 2020, just 4 years ago, I had to freaking wait in line for Costco. Like it was so packed. People wanted to shop there so much that I had to essentially wait like 45 minutes at one. I remember that specifically. It was a sunny day. I came super early in the morning just to shop at Costco, and I still had to wait in line. It was a wild, wild show. And I can expect that, obviously past performance does not indicate, future performance. It's not going to follow be exactly the same. However, I can see why other investors are thinking that, if Costco has done well in 2008, they didn't get destroyed in 2020. If there's another recession, why not Costco again? Because if Costco sells groceries at the lowest margin they can try to sell you at, right? The typical margin, right, on average, not for every single product, but on average, Costco margins are going to be around 11%. The reason why they're so low, right, is because that's not their main moneymaker. Like their main moneymaker is off of the membership. That's what they're trying to make money off of the membership. So their goal of Costco is essentially the same goal of me, which is I'm trying to buy groceries as cheap as possible. Costco is trying to sell groceries as cheap as possible because they're just trying to make reoccurring membership revenue. Their main goal is not on the margins itself. Now, this is different from other retailers because other retailers who don't have a subscription model to get into a Costco, they are hoping to make money off the margins, right? When I say margins, they are trying to sell you the products as expensive as they can because the more expensive they can sell their items to consumers, the more money they make. That's a very simple business model for them. However, as a consumer, I am not a big fan of that. Like, me and the company have different goals in mind. I'm trying to buy groceries as cheap as possible. And on the other end, the company is trying to sell groceries as expensive as they can. So we have a disconnect here, right? And that can cause friction between the company and the consumers itself. Another thing that Costco seems to be doing really well on is the shrinkage part. All right, the shrinkage part is essentially theft. Whereas other grocery stores they are dealing with theft, dealing with the shrinkage. Costco is one of those companies that on their earning report they don't report that type of issue. Like, why do they not? It's because to get in, you have to scan your membership, and if you are caught, stealing within Costco, Costco could just easily close out your membership, man. Right? They'll say thank you for your business, but no thank you, and move on with their day. Another thing about shrinkage in Costco is majority of the items are bulky. You can't just be putting, toilet paper in your pockets and heading out. When you're getting out of the store, you get those receipt checkers. I mean, there are certain things that Costco does that without having to hire a big security team. Like I recently went to one of the other competitor retailers. There are like super like security teams that like I see almost like they're almost in a SWAT team or something. They got the guns. There's so many of them within one small store. Whereas with Costco, it's like a whole warehouse. And like what I only basically see a basic security guard at the entrance. That's about it. So they don't have to pay so much money on security on extra protection of their assets, and that's one thing that I really enjoy of Costco here. Alrighty, you guys, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Again, my name is Andy the Banker. If you liked the content here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'd be happy to make a video answering your questions. This is something that I do as a hobby. It gives me a lot of joy. I not only do I do YouTube, I do TikTok as well. So thank you so much for joining. Make sure you leave a like. It tells people that recommends it to other people. I really appreciate you watching this, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.